Hello and welcome, I am Thomas Porteous and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. Russia and Ukraine agree to a naval ceasefire in the Black Sea in separate deals with the US. This comes after Washington states that all parties are working towards a durable and lasting peace. US President Donald Trump and his top officials downplay a security breach after a journalist is invited into a Signal group chat with the president's national security team. The chat reports to include official plans for strikes on Yemen and highly sensitive intelligence. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz takes responsibility for the leak. Houthi media reports at least 17 strikes in the Yemeni cities of Sada and Amran, blaming the United States for the attacks. These strikes come amidst its continued US bombardment against the Houthis, who have blocked vital Red Sea trading routes. US intelligence report says China poses the biggest military and cyber threat to the United States. The report also states that the Chinese military is enhancing capabilities for a potential conflict in Taiwan and that it aims to lead in artificial intelligence by 2030. President Donald Trump signs an executive order that aims to overhaul US federal elections. Experts warn that the move could defranchise millions of Americans who do not have easy access to certain legal documents. In South Korea, wildfires continue to ravage the country's south, leaving at least 19 people dead. Furthermore, a helicopter fighting the deadly blazes crashes, killing the pilot as officials race to bring the flames under control. Daily protests continue nationwide in Turkey after the jailing of Istanbul Mayor Imamoglu. Protests have seen more than 1,400 people arrested, along with some nightly clashes with police. Pakistan and China discuss security measures to protect Chinese nationals in the country. Talks are still a work in progress. Chinese workers face threats from Balochistan, where China has strategic interests. Starting off, US intelligence agencies say China is the biggest threat to America's security. A new report has warned that Beijing is expanding its military, improving its cyber warfare capabilities, and advancing artificial intelligence to challenge the US. The report says China is making steady but uneven progress on military capabilities it could use to seize Taiwan and deter US intervention. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard has said that China's military is growing stronger with hypersonic weapons, stealth planes, advanced submarines, and a bigger nuclear arsenal. She warned that China is building its space and cyber warfare capabilities and is working to surpass the US as the world's leader in AI technology by 2030. The report also warned that China can strike US territory with conventional weapons and compromise critical infrastructure through cyber attacks. The report also identified Russia, Iran, and North Korea as other security threats. Moving on now, India has been accused of meddling in Canada's Conservative Party leadership race. There have been allegations that Indian agents were involved in fundraising and organising within the South Asian community to support Pierre Poilievre in 2022. Poilievre, who won with 68% of the vote, insists that he secured victory fair and square. The Canadian intelligence found no evidence the interference influenced the outcome. The allegations surfaced just as Canada's general election campaign gained momentum. Liberal leader Mark Carney criticised Poilievre for refusing a security clearance, calling it irresponsible. Poilievre now argues that the process is politicised and would restrict him from speaking publicly on key issues. This was after a public inquiry previously found that both India and China attempted to interfere in past elections, with minimal impact. Intelligence officials warn foreign agents from China, Russia, and India target diaspora communities through disinformation campaigns ahead of April the 28th election. India has repeatedly denied all interference claims. Over to the US now, where Donald Trump has signed a sweeping executive order aimed at overhauling the nation's election system. The order mandates proof of citizenship to vote and blocks states from counting mail-in ballots received after Election Day. States that refuse to comply could lose federal funding. The White House says the move is designed to prevent voter fraud, but at the same time, critics argue it could disenfranchise millions who lack passports or other legal documents. Reports say the experts point out that non-citizens are already barred from voting and cases of illegal voting are extremely rare. Donald Trump has repeatedly claimed without evidence that past elections were tainted by fraud. He says that this order will restore election integrity, but legal analysts say states control their own election laws and this order is likely to face court challenges. Moving on now, amid the raging wildfires in South Korea, a helicopter fighting deadly wildfires has crashed, killing the pilot. So far, at least 19 people have been killed, one in one of South Korea's worst wildfire outbreaks, with multiple raging blazes causing unprecedented damage. More than a dozen wildfires broke out over the weekend, scorching wide swathes of the southeast, forcing around 27,000 people to urgently evacuate, with the fire cutting off roads and downing communication lines as residents fled in panic. Overnight, the death toll jumped as wind-driven flames tore through neighborhoods and raised an ancient temple. According to the Interior Ministry, the wildfires have charred over 17,000 hectares of land, with the blaze in Yongsan County alone accounting for 87% of the total. The government has raised the crisis alert to its highest level and taken the rare step of transferring thousands of prisoners. In the city of Andong, some evacuees are sheltering in an elementary school gym. They said they had to flee so quickly they could bring nothing with them. Meanwhile, South Korea's Prime Minister and acting President Han Suk-soo has vowed to deploy all forces to fight the wildfires. Let's have a listen in.
역대 최악의 산불 기록을 갈아쓰고 있습니다. 산불 진화 과정에서 유명을 달리하신 4분을 포함하여 현재 기준 총 18분이 목숨을 잃고 주민 2만 3천여 명이 긴급 대피하였습니다. 우리나라에 주둔하고 있는 미군으로부터도 헬기의 지원을 받는 등 이러한 지원을 최대한 동원해서 진화 작업에 전력을.
Let's move over to the ongoing situation in Turkey now, where almost 1,500 people have been detained in the country as tens of thousands continued protests in the Turkish capital after the arrest of the main political rival of President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. This is the biggest protest in Turkey in over a decade. They erupted last week following the arrest of the Istanbul mayor on corruption charges, a move opposition supporters see as a blatant violation of the rule of law. The leader of Turkey's opposition Republican People's Party called for mass rally and demanded for open trials and early elections. In fact, let's take a listen to what he said.
Cumartesi günü İstanbul'un bir büyük meydanında Ekrem İmamoğlu'na sahip çıkmak için Ekrem İmamoğlu'nun tutukluluğuna, belediye başkanlarımızın her birinin tutukluluğuna itiraz etmek için şeffaf, açık, canlı yayında yargılamalar talep etmek için artık canımıza tak etti, erken seçim istiyoruz demek için bir büyük mitinge.
Now, authorities have hit back with a crackdown that has alarmed rights groups, with 7 journalists who covered the protest remanded in custody by an Istanbul court. While speaking on the unfolding tensions in Turkey, here's what the president of Turkey had to say.
Sokaklarda terör estirenlerin, bu ülkeyi yangın yerine çevirmek isteyenlerin varacağı hiçbir menzil yoktur. Girdikleri yol çıkmaz sokaktır.
Let's turn to the US now, where Vice President J.D. Vance will be joining his wife Usha in travelling to Greenland, a visit that followed Donald Trump's threats to take over the island. As per reports, the couple will go to Pitt Uffick Space Base to receive a briefing on Arctic security issues and meet members of US forces stationed there. Usha Vance has planned to travel to the Danish territory on a cultural visit before her husband announced his plans. Officials in Greenland have fiercely criticised the planned visits as disrespectful. Trump's national security advisor Mike Waltz is also set to visit this week on a separate trip. In a video posted on social media platform X, Vance said there was a lot of excitement around his wife's trip to Greenland. He is joining her because he didn't want her to have all the fun by herself. Let's have a look.
Guys, it's J.D. Vance, the Vice President, and you know there was so much excitement around Usha's visit to Greenland this Friday that I decided that I didn't want her to have all that fun by herself, and so I'm going to join her. I'm going to visit some of our guardians in the Space Force on the northwest coast of Greenland and also just check out what's going on with the security there of Greenland. As you know, it's really important. A lot of other countries have threatened Greenland, have threatened to use its territories and its waterways to threaten the United States, to threaten Canada, and of course to threaten the people of Greenland. So we're going to check out how things are going there. And I say that speaking for President Trump, we want to reinvigorate the security of the people of Greenland because we think it's important to protecting the security of the entire world. Unfortunately, leaders in both America and in Denmark, I think, ignored Greenland for far too long. That's been bad for Greenland. It's also been bad for the security of the entire world. We think we can take things in a different direction.
To the Indo-Pacific now, where China and Pakistan are in ongoing discussions to enhance security measures for Chinese nationals working in Pakistan. It has been confirmed by Islamabad's ambassador to Beijing. The talks come amid persistent militant attacks targeting Chinese citizens, particularly in Balochistan, where China has key investments. While speaking at the Bayao Forum in Henan, Ambassador Khalil Hashmi emphasized Pakistan's national responsibility to protect Chinese workers and assured that both nations are closely cooperating on security protocols. Beijing has been urging Pakistan to allow Chinese security personnel to safeguard thousands of its citizens, especially after an October bombing at Karachi airport that killed 2 Chinese engineers. Hashmi acknowledged the complexity of Pakistan's security situation, but expressed confidence in its ability to counter threats. He reaffirmed that Pakistan is keeping China informed on protective measures, calling security efforts a work in progress. China remains deeply concerned as attacks on its nationals continue to strain bilateral relations. Staying in South Asia now, where Bangladesh's interim chief advisor Mohammed Yunus is set to visit China on March the 26th for his first high-level diplomatic trip since taking office in August 2024. This comes amid strained ties with India and Dhaka's push for stronger economic and political engagement with Beijing. During his 4-day visit, Yunus will attend the Bayao Forum for Asia in Henan on March the 27th and is expected to hold a bilateral meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing the next day. He will also speak at Peking University, where he is reportedly set to receive an honorary doctorate. China and Bangladesh are likely to sign at least 8 agreements covering trade, culture, Mongla port development and water management. Dhaka is seeking lower interest rates on Chinese loans and extension of repayment periods. With this visit, Yunus hopes to strengthen Bangladesh's ties with China and gain international recognition for his interim government. Let's turn back to the Middle East now, where Israeli security forces have killed a Palestinian during a raid in the occupied West Bank city of Qalqilia. The Palestinian Health Ministry identified him as 19-year-old Bara Yusuf. Hamas says he was a member of its militant wing. Israel claims he was planning an imminent attack on civilians and opened fire on troops during the raid. In response, Israeli forces used live ammunition, shoulder-launched missiles and an explosive drone. 2 others were also injured in the operation. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has announced that he will begin the process of selecting a new security chief. This comes after the Supreme Court blocked the government from firing the current head of the internal security agency, Shin Bet. Netanyahu also said that he had lost confidence in security chief Ronen Bar, but the court intervened, suspending his removal until a hearing next month. The Attorney General has also opposed the move, warning of a possible conflict of interest. Shin Bet has been investigating allegations that people close to Netanyahu received money from Qatar. Meanwhile, Hamdan Balal, the Palestinian co-director of the Oscar-winning documentary No Other Land, who was detained by the Israeli army yesterday after being attacked by settlers, has been released. In a post on social media platform X on Tuesday, his fellow co-director Yuval Abraham said, "After being handcuffed all night and beaten in a military base, Hamdan Balal is now free and is about to go home to his family." Balal said he was held at an army base and forced to sleep under a freezing air conditioner. This is not the first time that directors and a member of the crew of the No Other Land team have been attacked by settlers. Last February, Adra was also surrounded and attacked by masked Israeli settlers. While speaking about the treatment received while he was detained, here's what Hamdan had to say.
يعني هجوم قوي جدا اللي هو بهدف القتل اللي هو بعد ما فزت في الأوسكار. ما كنت متوقع إنه أنا أتعرض لهيك هجومات. أنا فكرت إنه فعلا بعد الأوسكار صار إنه الهجوم مركز كثير ممكن علينا وتهديد حتى على حياتنا مستقبلا. طبعا كان يضرب في جميع أنحاء جسمي وكان في جن.
Staying in the region, Houthi media reports at least 17 strikes in the Yemeni cities of Sada and Amran, blaming the United States for the attacks. According to Al Mazara TV, US air raids hit the Sahar district on Tuesday, marking an escalation in the conflict. This comes after Washington launched a military offensive against the Iran-backed group on March the 15th, promising to use overwhelming force until the Houthis stop targeting vessels in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. The initial strikes killed senior Houthi leaders, with the rebels reporting 53 casualties. Since then, the US has carried out near-daily strikes on Houthi-controlled areas, while the rebels continue to target US military ships and Israel. President Donald Trump has threatened to annihilate the group and warned that Iran against supporting them. The Houthis initially halted attacks on the shipping after a Gaza ceasefire in January, but threatened to resume strikes over Israelis' aid blockade. US President Donald Trump's administration has significantly expanded the trade blacklist it inherited from the previous Joe Biden government, aiming to further constrict China's capabilities to develop artificial intelligence and advanced computing, as well as direct military technologies like hypersonic missiles. The Bureau of Industry and Security of the US Commerce Department has added 80 organizations to the entity list for actions contrary to US national security and foreign policy. We turn over to South America now, where Peru's President Dina Boluarte has set a date for general elections. The vote will take place on the 12th of April 2026. She hopes this will bring stability to the country after years of political turmoil. Peru has had 6 presidents in the last 7 years. Boluarte took office in 2022 after Pedro Castillo was removed and arrested. Her announcement comes amid a security crisis. The government declared a state of emergency in Lima and Callao after a musician was killed. The incident sparked protests and led to the removal of the interior minister. Boluarte faces strong criticism. She is under investigation for allegedly hiding assets, including luxury watches. She also faces a complaint at the International Criminal Court over deadly protests in 2022 and 2023. Boluarte says her government will stay neutral in the upcoming elections. She promises a fair vote where the people's will is respected. Let's take a listen to what the president had to say.
Cumpliendo con el mandato constitucional y legal, demostrando nuestro firme compromiso con la democracia y con la presencia acá de las autoridades que conforman el sistema electoral, convoco a elecciones generales para el 12 de abril del 2026. Esperamos por el bien del Perú y de las presentes y futuras generaciones que los comicios del 2026 no solo permitan a nuestros ciudadanos ejercer su derecho al sufragio, sino también poner fin al periodo de inestabilidad que ha llevado al Perú a tener 6 presidentes en los últimos años, generando una polarización que solo nos ha dividido.
9 members of Colombia's biggest drug cartel have been killed in government airstrikes, as per reports. The strikes on the Gulf Clan took place in a gold mining region in northwestern Antigua. One of the group's strongholds, President Gustavo Petro accused the cartel unit targeted in this attack of ambushing Special Forces members and murdering a local mining leader, Jamie Galello. Writing on X, the president added that the security forces had captured a Gulf Clan member and seized 13 rifles. The Gulf Clan was born out of the right-wing paramilitary groups that fought left-wing guerrillas in the 1990s, sometimes in cahoots with drug traffickers, before laying down arms in the 2000s. Thailand's Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra has sailed through a no-confidence vote in Parliament, emerging unscathed from a 2-day opposition onslaught and reaffirming the stability of her ruling coalition. Thailand's youngest Prime Minister won the backing of 319 out of 488 lawmakers present. This came despite a barrage of barbs during a censure debate that accused her of being unqualified, lacking economic knowledge, evading tax and taking direction from her influential father. Thanks in Shinawatra, the debate was the biggest test for the ruling coalition, consisting of several pro-royalist and military-backed parties. Thailand's Prime Minister Paetongtarn thanked her coalition for its support in helping her to pass a no-confidence vote in Parliament, and in a post on X Media Social, said every vote helps her and her cabinet to serve the country. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio begins a Caribbean visit focusing on energy, security, illegal migration. Is heading to the Caribbean this week, focusing on his tour includes visits to Jamaica, Guyana and Suriname. A key goal is to reduce the region's dependence on Venezuelan oil. This trip comes just days after President Donald Trump announced new sanctions on Venezuelan oil exports. He also threatened a 25% tariff on goods from countries that buy Venezuelan oil. Rubio will also discuss the crisis in Haiti. A multinational peacekeeping force has struggled to control gang violence. On the 25th of March, Rubio spoke with Kenya's president about the situation. Trump's administration sees this as a critical moment for Caribbean energy security. However, despite the new sanctions, the US Treasury Department extended a waiver for Chevron to keep importing Venezuelan oil until May. A judge ordered US authorities to cease efforts and detain and deport a New York college student, Yoon Seo Chung, as President Donald Trump presses his campaign against pupils linked to pro-Palestinian protests. Chung sued Donald Trump and other high-ranking administrations to stop their targeting of her and other students. And on Thursday, a federal judge ordered the Trump administration to halt its efforts to arrest and deport Chung, saying nothing in the record indicated that Chung posed a danger to the community. Her location remains undisclosed, and Chung herself has remained shielded for her own protection from the public. Unlike some of the other students, the administration has targeted for pro-Palestinian activism, including recent graduate Mahmoud Khalil, who led protests on campus, and Cornell PhD student Momodou Tal, who delivered speeches at his university's pro-Palestinian encampment. Chung's involvement in the movement was low profile. She didn't play an organizing or leading role in any of the protest efforts. She didn't speak to the media about her activism. Over to Africa now, where hundreds of civilians were reportedly killed in an airstrike on a market in Sudan's Darfur region, according to local rights groups and the United Nations. The attack on Tora Market, northwest of El Fasher, left dozens more injured. The UN has expressed grave concern over the rising civilian toll in Sudan's nearly 2-year conflict. Emergency lawyers, a pro-democracy group, called the bombing a horrific massacre and accused the Sudanese armed forces of targeting civilians. The Sudanese military denied the allegations, insisting it only struck hostile targets. However, videos circulating online showed charred bodies and market stalls reduced to ruins. The strikes come amid escalating violence between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary rapid support forces. The UN has called for an independent investigation, warning that continued attacks on civilians could constitute as war crimes. The Darfur region remains a battleground as both sides vie for control. Here's what a UN spokesperson had to say.
And turning to Sudan, we are gravely alarmed by the continued attacks on civilians across that country. Last night in Darfur, dozens of casualties were reported when airstrikes hit a market located about 40 kilometers northwest of El Fayed.
Well, that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from across the world.